All right, welcome everyone. People are still joining, but let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to the webinar for the Nature Future Framework. This is part of our webinar series for the 11th ESP World Conference, and it will be held in Darwin, in Australia this June. And so joining with us today, we have Dr. Saito and Dr. Haga from Japan, and we also have Thomas, Sakshi, and Nita joining us as moderators, and we will drill into the Nature Future Framework, its developments, applications, and also sharing about the Nature Future Framework Community of Practice. And just a little bit introduction about ES. So we are Young Ecosystem Service Specialists, and it's a initiative started by early career researcher within the ESP network. And our main group is for simulating and exchanging the ideas, identify knowledge gaps, and improve the possibility for sharing capacity building across ecosystem service science and practice. And we're very happy to have Dr. Saito and Dr. Haga and everyone with us today. I'm sure like a huge part of the participant is also YES member, and welcome everyone else. We also have a separate sessions in ESP conference this June. It's our early career researcher talk about grant proposal, research writing, and networking textbooks for ecosystem service. And so now I will leave the floor for Nita. She is the ES member and honest representative, and she will be the main host and beside Thomas and Sakshi for this webinar.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Once again, warm welcome to you all. Ray, could you go to the slide before this? Yep, I think move the slide.
All right.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to thank you all for making the time to joining today, and start with telling you a bit about our speakers. We have Dr. Osamu Saito, who is an expert in the field of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and who's currently a principal policy researcher at the Institute of Global Environmental Studies in Japan. And we also have Dr. Chihiro Haga here, who is a specially appointed assistant professor at the Osaka University, and he's interested in integrating nature's diverse values in decision making. So we have these two great experienced experts, and along with them, we also have our early career researchers joining us, Dr. Thomas Schmitt, who is a postdoctoral fellow at the Karls Institute of Technology in Germany, and is involved in scenario development and modeling work to understand land use change across Europe. And we have Sakshi Rana also with us, who is a PhD student at the Wildlife Institute of India. And she is currently assessing the ecosystem services of a protected area in India and their contributions to local well-being. So we have a great team of mix of very experienced and people who are getting their hands on the Nature Future framework. So we hope to learn a lot from them. And just wanted to add that both Thomas and Sakshi are currently IPBES fellows, and they are part of the IPBES task force for scenarios and modeling. With that, I would like to hand over the floor to Dr. Osamu Saito. Please go ahead and tell us more about your interesting work. Yeah, thank you.
So we will have Dr. Saito with us, and he's the senior policy researcher from Institute of the Global Environmental Strategies. He is the lead authors of several IPBES assessments and also the global IPBES concept framework. And now we will leave the floor for Dr. Saito to share with us about the Nature Future framework and IPBES work in general.
Thank you very much. Let me share screen. First of all, I'd like to thank the YES to provide these opportunities. I'm very happy to present today about Nature Futures Framework and also our proposed session at the ESP 11 in Darwin. So let me start the very basic background of the IPBES, as you may know, most of you already know. So, but before the IPBES, I've been also involved in the subglobal assessment of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment in Japan, focusing on Satoyama and Satoumi landscapes, so rural cultural landscape and seascapes in Japan from 2006. And then we developed an assessment report on Satoyama Satoumi in 2010. At the time of the CBD COP10 in Nagoya, when the Aichi biodiversity target was formulated. But anyway, so afterwards, Satoyama Satomi assessment, I've been also heavily involved in IPBES process, establishment of IPBES. Before the establishment 2012, at that time I was working for the United Nations University, and we organized expert workshops 3 times in Tokyo to discuss about how to structurize the IPBES, what kind of function, what kind of assessment should be developed by IPBES, and also what kind of topics should be potential topics for the IPBES assessment. So those discussion workshop took place in Tokyo before 2012. Actually, it was about 2010 and 2011 we organized such kind of expert workshop in Tokyo in collaboration with UNESCO and UNEP. But anyway, so you may know already about this key 4 functions of IPBES. And then the task force is also involved in both assessment and also knowledge generation. Task force and scenario and models also kind of supporting this assessment and knowledge generation. Of course, task force also contributed to capacity building in many ways, but there is another task force on capacity building independently. And these are the completed assessment. So 2 new assessments just approved in December in Namibia. So Nexus assessment and transformative assessment has been approved. But these are the old assessment which already completed. And there's also a couple of the ongoing assessment, spatial planning. I didn't include, but biodiversity and business assessment. Second global assessment will start pretty soon, and the spatial planning assessment is also ongoing. So these are and the red highlighted one is the one I was also involved, and also the one methodological assessment on scenario and models on biodiversity ecosystem services. This is quite relevant to today's the webinar about the Nature Futures Framework. So I'm going to start from this one, which was released in 2016 about scenario and models. The scenarios are available and useful tools for policy support, but the most global scenarios are limited to accessing impact of drivers on biodiversity and ecosystem services. Most global scenarios are developed for other purposes, climate change, and most global scenario lacks a participatory approach. So these are key issues identified by this scenario and models, biodiversity, ecosystem services, methodological assessment of scenario and models. And this assessment also identified the different type of the scenarios which can contribute to different the major phases of policy cycle. So target seeking scenarios, policy screening scenarios, retrospective policy evaluation, the exploratory scenarios. So these different type of scenarios can contribute to different phase, agenda setting, design, implementation, and the review. So different phases can also relate to the different type of the scenarios. So these are the one of the key the figures and the key message from this methodological assessment. And this is also the how the scenario can be positioned in relation with IPBES conceptual framework. So scenario can provide narratives and also the assumptions for the indirect drivers and direct drivers. And the models can be located in between direct drivers, and also model can be positioned between nature and direct drivers. And also the different type of the models can also connect between nature's contribution to people and nature. So this is a conceptual model to how to understand the scenario and models in relation with IPBES conceptual framework. And this is the knowledge gap identified by this methodological assessment. So last one, the red highlighted one, is quite relevant to why we developed the nature futures framework. So developing flexible, adaptable suite of multi-scale scenarios, especially tailored to the objective of IPBES, biodiversity and ecosystem services. So this is one of the key knowledge gap why we develop the nature futures framework. So after the methodological assessment, the scenario and models, the second phase task force activities focus on the also try to contribute the additional ongoing assessment. But in addition, the smaller group of the experts try to organize series of workshops since 2016 about how to operationalize and implement the second phase. And as a result, they also organize the Auckland workshop in 2017 with a large number of the participants, 75 participants from 31 countries to discuss about the future visions, nature futures vision. So they have the setting scene and also the constructing scenarios, skeletons, and the fleshing out narratives, and then also the comparing the different visions. So during this workshop, they created the 7 different future scenarios as nature futures. So marine, culture, food production, and then also the prosperity, nature, dining, and also the water and urban rural flows. So these are the 7 future scenarios identified, and this is also the summarized as a report, science and technology report, and also this is also the open to the public. This report is open to the public, and then based on this, after this workshop in 2017. In 2018, there's another workshop organized in Netherlands. And during this workshop, the 7 the visions plotted plotted mapping in this way in the right diagram by using different the values for nature and also the space for nature or the management of nature in the vertical axis. So they try to understand how they can position these 7 identified future visions. And then during through this exercise, I didn't join this workshop, those 2 workshops. So I'm not really don't know how they finally came up with this triangle in the end. But during this workshop, this workshop, or during or after this workshop report identified this triangle with 3 kind of pillars: nature for nature, nature as culture, and nature for society, which represent nature for nature represent intrinsic value, and nature as culture represent the relation values, and nature for society prioritize instrumental values. So these 3 value systems also in line with the IPBES value concept. So this is from the value assessment diagram or table, which divide value in 3 types: the intrinsic, relational, and the instrumental. So these are the aligned with these value systems. And then the right diagram, diagram, indicate how 7 vision can be located. And also that during this workshop, they also positioned different type of the scenarios with a different type of the titles. So these exercise, this workshop is, I think that the first time they used the term of the nature futures framework with this famous triangle figure. But this nature futures framework itself was approved by IPBES plenary in 2022. But this triangle, the nature futures framework itself was developed in 2017. And after that, there are a couple of the representative the articles, including Laura's articles, are published. And then right now, after the approval of the IPBES plenary in 2022, the more and more the research articles published, and the number is increasing. So this is from the and also in 2023, the guideline of the scenario, a guideline of the nature futures frameworks are also approved by the IPBES plenary, and it's also open to the public. So when you gonna use nature futures frameworks, so methodological, the guidance document should be checked. But anyway, so this is I took from the methodological guideline, and then these also include and how it can be used. And in this space of the nature futures framework, we assume other SDG goals and targets and GBF goals and targets should be also simultaneously achieved when you choose the scenario of the nature as culture. But in this case, also the 30 by 30 of the GBF should be achieved in each different future scenarios. So that's a precondition of the understanding of the nature futures framework. So good example, one of the representative examples is also let me go this one, sorry, this one. So this is a clear examples. Under each nature for society, nature for nature, nature's culture, you have to achieve 30 by 30 with different arrangement of the protected areas. So this is a quite important point to understand when you use nature futures framework. So let me go back to this one. And then, so this is a kind of brief history of the nature futures framework. And then I would hand over to Haga-san more specific case studies from Japan. But these are also the Lola's articles in 2020 under each nature for society, nature for nature, nature's culture, in the marine context and then rural context and urban context, what should be emphasized? What kind of the issue should be considered? So these are the one representative narratives to understand the different nature for society, nature for nature, and nature as culture. But the key point is that for the nature of society's instrumental values to benefit from nature, maximizing benefit from nature is a kind of important perspective. And in the case of the nature for nature, intrinsic value is quite important. So try to protect half Earth or protecting nature is quite important. And nature's cultures as a people should be considered as a part of the nature. And these series of the diagrams are also developed illustrated, and then these are also provided from the co-chair of the task force member of the scenario and models. So these are urban case, the image, and also these lower part is rural landscapes. And this is the ocean landscapes or seascapes image of the three scenarios. And also, meanwhile, the previous task force members jointly developed this narrative and storylines. Not only the three pillars, nature for nature, nature's cultures, and nature for society, they also considered the scenarios in between, the balancing NN and NC, and balancing NN and NS, and balancing NC and NS. So they created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 narratives in their articles. Sorry. Yeah, so this one is already published from the Sustainability Science, which I'm managing editor. And then maybe I'm gonna stop in a minute. So this one is a methodological guidance of the Nature Futures framework. So please take a look at, download this one and check before you use. And then also you can check this special feature of the Nature Futures framework from the Sustainability Science Journal, which I mentioned. And then I also co-authored a couple of articles in these special features. And also the Dr. Haga, who will speak after me, he already published his articles in this special, as a part of this special feature. So far, we have 12 articles in these special features, and this will be to finish pretty soon. But even after finishing these special features, once you submit your articles, you can, and accepted if your paper is accepted, then your paper can be connected with topical correction of this special feature. Anyway, sorry. And this is the last slide. So about the ESP conference proposed session about Nature Futures framework. So I hope that the deadline was extended to 31st of March. So I look forward to having more abstract to this session. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop here. And I'm welcome to your questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very comprehensive overview of the NFF from its history to the future, more or less, right? Towards new research. For the Q&A, we would like to ask you to really use this Q&A chat box that Nita has already advertised to put in some questions, and you can also raise your hand to speak up then. So that'd be great. And I'm just going to kick off now because you already mentioned the conference coming up with new research activities presented. And you've been involved quite a bit in IPBES, right? And also in the development of the NFF. Are your expectations met now? Now there is quite some research going on the NFF, or would you say there are particular aspects that you're missing, particular aspects that that we as young ecosystem services researchers should take into account?
I think there is I mean, the modeling part, well, we're also interested in the different approach to build the scenarios, meeting local context and the stakeholders. So in Japan, that we also having the different type of the workshop with stakeholders, depending on the local areas conditions. So I'm actually working on the 3 different sites in Japan, but depending on the area and their people's needs, we are taking kind of slightly different approach. So to develop future scenario narratives. And after developing narratives, we are also working on how to develop the new models to predict or project the changes of the ecosystem services and biodiversity in the future. And also we also need to use different indicators to meet the local context. So also developing the new indicators. So unlike climate change, we cannot only use GHG as a common indicator. So we have to use different indicators. So those are then, but how we're going to select different indicator is also the challenging part. So even though we are accumulating some of the case studies from different parts of the world, but the approach is kind of, the number of the different approaches also increasing. And then also that we try to, understand what is a more or less a kind of common approach, but but we can also customize to meet the different context, local context. So these are I think, key challenges we are facing, and we are also looking forward to having the new contribution from the early career researchers.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience so far?
So until then, I would like to pose a question to Dr. Osamu. It's more towards human side of your research. Since you've been working with this tool for so long, with NFF tool for so long, so are there any personal reasons for using this particular tool for scenario analysis, or what exactly do you like about this framework? Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, well, first of all, yeah, at the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, they use kind of different approach. I mean, they are they're using two axes. And then also the globalization and then they use the two axes. One axis is globalization, localization, and the horizontal axis is how the people manage nature, proactive or reactive management. So these two axes is used to identify 4 different scenarios. That one is also quite useful and also easy to understand, and it was widely used in a slightly modified. And then that was, yeah, I think it's also quite useful. And I don't think, this is still kind of relevant and useful. But I think that this NFF, the advantage of NFF is clearly captured the 3 major value systems, which are not really used or considered in the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment two-axis approach. So that is also one of the advantage. And then the other thing is that while the two-axis scenario building approach is also the simple and easy to understand, but this nature futures framework is also quite easy to understand for the local people. We already organized a couple of more than 3 or 4 local workshops by inviting local farmers and local practitioners and local policymakers and local businesses. And then we explained this nature futures framework to discuss their futures. And then I found first it's a bit kind of abstract and maybe it's a bit difficult for them. But once we start using, then it was quite easily adapted, understood. And then the people can just very easy used to what is NN or what is NS. They just use, oh, this idea is more or less close to the NC, and this idea seems to be the close to the NN, or this may be the in between NN and NS or something like that. So I think this will also help to stretch their ideas, because people often just thinking of the sphere of or space, mind space, more closely linked with nature as culture and the nature for society. Sometimes they do not extend their ideas, they extend their futures ideas to considering nature for nature sometimes. So that we found. So when we asked people, what is the issue? What's the challenge for them? Then they can easily identify something to do with nature for society. But when it comes to, we ask them what kind of, the response options or the policies or actions should be taken, then people identify more actions or response options linked to the nature's cultures in rural area in Japan. So, but they cannot list much actions for nature or nature of society. So these are something we initially preliminarily found by using this nature futures framework. But this one can really help to stretch or extend the kind of their existing mindset and stimulate to expand their future perspectives. So I think that's one of the advantages using nature futures framework.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Dr. Saito. Yeah.
Yes, still no other questions. I have one more following up then. If you're talking about the mindset of people in society that the NFF can change, but you're a policy researcher, right? Do you see capacity that the NFF can make it more predominantly actually into policies as well, as a nature positive, normative kind of scenario framing? And what needs to happen that they are, actually then operationalized in policies, these kind of scenarios?
Right. We also, as a part of my project, we have also been reviewing the multiple policy document in Japan from different minister, not only the Ministry of Environment, but also the Ministry of the Infrastructure, Transportation Infrastructure, or Ministry of the Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. So different the ministries developed the bit different the future policy and plans relating to the nature to make the country itself or society more nature positive. And then we're reviewing, and then they'll try to connect using this nature futures framework. And then we're reviewing what kind of, the policies are missing, and we found that more and more the policy options can be easily aligned with nature for society's aspect. So most of the existing policies seems to stand on established to meet the needs of the nature of society, and less policy tools or policy options are implemented so far. Less policies implemented in terms of the nature for nature and nature as culture. That is we found preliminary found in Japan, but we also try to identify what is the gaps and how we can strengthen the aspect of the nature for nature and nature as culture aspect. So that is and then what kind of actions and the response options should be strengthened to fill those gaps. So this is also we try to convey the message to the policymakers, because we have the Japan National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, NBSAP, but actually in Japan, more than 100 local municipalities already established the Local Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, LBSAPs. So when they renew or develop a new LBSAPs, we also try to use this nature futures framework to strengthen their policies and balance the policies to fill the gaps. So that is actually we are working on. I don't know if I answer your question, but this is something we are now working on.
Thank you. That's great. We have now one question from the audience that we will still take, and then move on to the next speaker. Sylvia, do you want to ask the question in real life time?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the floor. And yes, the question is actually about some experience we have from the local context here in the Venice Lagoon in Italy, is that policymakers and stakeholders might have visions for the future and scenarios that are not actually meeting the biodiversity targets that Dr. Saito mentioned to be a precondition for the application of the Nature Future framework. So I was actually wondering whether this kind of approach, so then the Nature Future Frameworks tool, can also be used to include in the analysis, in the comparison, scenarios that are not actually meeting the biodiversity targets, so that are not very nature positive by themselves. But if it can be used as a framework to compare these scenarios with scenarios that are instead more nature positive. Thank you.
That's well, interesting question. I mean, I haven't thought about that yet. So at least, so well, the to understand nature positive, there is the couple of the different approach to understand. I mean, it's also related to the definition of the nature positive. And then before the comparison, we have to kind of identify how to really measure the outcome of the nature positive. So how we can really measure the nature positiveness. So the one is the target-based approach, and the second one is a process-based approach. So the process-based approach to measure the nature positiveness, in that case, it's going to be very difficult to compare, because I think it's more or less like a process-based. It's not impact-based. If it's impact-based or target-based measurement, then it can be comparable. So in case of but we have, I think we need to really compare. No, we need to really discuss what kind of indicators should be set under the each nature futures framework to measure the outcome or impact of the scenarios. So maybe I think a good example is our next case studies in Japan. Dr. Haga will explain. What they did is that they set the common indicators for 3 scenarios so that they can compare how it's nature positive or not. But at the same time, they use unique indicators for each perspective, nature for nature. So unique indicators for nature for nature. And also they also identify unique indicators for nature for society. And also they set the unique indicator for nature as culture. In that case, it's quite difficult to compare. But in terms of within the common indicators, you can compare. So that's what we did in Japan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that is a perfect transition now. Thank you already for answering a couple of questions here and getting the discussion started. We would now actually move to the Japanese case study.
Okay, I will share my screen. It works. Okay, so thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to present today. And my name is Chihiro Haga from Osaka, Japan. And I'm an engineer focusing on the landscape change and ecosystem services, working with Dr. Osamu Saito on a Nature Futures Framework project in Japan. And today, I will talk about a case study, local scale case study that explores how we can use the Nature Futures Framework, or NFF, for landscape change modeling at a local scale. And in this region, we began our modeling work in 2016, around the same time that the NFF concept was first introduced. And our case study site is the Bekkan-Beushi River watershed located in the northeastern Japan. And this is a very small watershed with 70% forest and 20% grassland. And key industries have include aquaculture in Akechi Bay and dairy farming, forestry, and ecotourism. And in recent years, solar power plants, solar power PV, have also been installed on pasture land and roadsides. And the region is facing a serious issue, that is depopulation, population decline. So by 2050, the population is expected to fall to the half of its current level. This raises concerns about how local culture, industry, and landscape management will change in the future. Then we conducted a scenario analysis using the Nature Futures framework. Our approach was quite straightforward. The Nature Futures framework, NFF, aims to visualize the positive future of nature that maximize the plural values of nature. This aligns well with the concept of multi-objective optimization, where we aim to achieve the multiple goals at the same time. So the definition, defining what should be evaluated in the region, in your region, is very important for NFF. And in our case study site, we selected 15 indicators that can be evaluated by the output of our simulation model. We assumed that the scenario is nature positive if it maintains or improves the landscape structure and ecosystem functioning, as shown in the green box. And we identified the indicators to evaluate plural values of nature by literature survey. So Nature for Nature, NN, focuses on the rewilding. We assess the habitat quality for rare bird species and biomass of native plants. And Nature for Society, NS, focuses on the ecosystem services, provisioning services, for example, food and energy provision. And Nature as Culture, NC, emphasizes the landscapes that support the cultural identity and livelihoods. So we assessed the viewshed of Akechi town and riparian forest biomass that supports the aquaculture in Akechi Bay. And we developed over 100 scenarios, including the BAU, by considering the two contrasting assumptions for forestry and pastureland management and energy production. In land sparing strategies in orange, that promotes the rewilding as population declines. So these cases reduce the forest management and pastureland management in the future as population declined. And land sharing scenarios assumes the continued landscape management despite the depopulation. So people work 3 times hard for landscape management in these cases to sustain the ecosystem services. So in total, 110 plausible management cases, feasible landscape management cases were created. And these strategies were input to the simulation model LANDIS2. It is a spatially explicit ecological model that simulates the vegetation dynamics under different land use policies. Our case study is not limited for a specific model, so you can replace this part to your own model. And we evaluated the model output to evaluate the plural values of nature in each cases. Okay, so let's move on to the results. First, we evaluated our NFF indicators for all 110 landscape management strategies towards 2,100. And these results showed clear differences between strategies over time, depending on the management strategies. Then we screened for nature positive strategies, as shown in the blue. We defined a strategy as nature positive if the indicator value in the 2030 and 2050 was higher than the current level. As a result, almost the half of strategies were identified as nature positive ones. Then we want to know which management strategies can improve the plural values of nature, intrinsic value or cultural values or provisioning values. So we analyzed the nature positive strategies, 51 nature positive strategies using the concept of Pareto optimality. The Pareto optimal solutions means that we cannot improve one or value without making over other value worse. So in the left figure, each dot represents each strategy. The colored plots are the Pareto optimal solutions between nature for nature indicator and the nature for society indicator. And the black dots are also nature positive, but are outperformed by the colored plots. So for more technical detail, please refer to my paper. But the Pareto optimality helps us to identify the desirable future among plural value of nature. This is our key message, one of our key message. And here is the example of our case study. We found the trade-offs between nature for nature and nature for society, and also between nature for society and nature as culture, resulting in distinct Pareto frontiers. And these strategies are all desirable in different ways, but they lead to different landscapes in the future. Here are examples of how the landscape changes under each strategy. In NN, nature for nature oriented futures, pasture land is abandoned and rewilded for local nature. And nature for society oriented scenario, abandoned farmland is used for energy production. And in the nature as culture, the existing landscape structure that supports the local identity is maintained. All of these scenarios, futures, are equally plausible and desirable according to our indicator system. But what management actions led to these outcomes? And we used the decision tree analysis to find key response options for each future visions. The most important response option in this region was forestry practice. Selective cutting is the best for our case study site for towards the positive futures. And the second key option, response option, was the utilization of abandoned farmland. depending on the extent of renewable energy development on the abandoned land. This resulted in NN, NS, or even negative futures, not positive futures. So these results showed that the NFF enable us to compare the plural values of nature and envision the diverse futures for the region, while also clarifying key local response options at the same time. So the NFF may also be a valuable tool for communication, helping to engage the different stakeholders, forestry and energy sectors, and guide the discussion on sustainable landscape management. And yeah, I briefly summarize my talk for the future NFF study at local scale. First, we need to carefully define the terms: nature positive, carbon neutral, plural values of nature for each local case study site, aligning with the global, national, and regional context. So yeah, it is very difficult question how to connect the NB-SAP, LB-SAP, and NFF for the region. And we need to explicitly include the stakeholders' narratives and preferences as they influence the management and model outcomes. And we should also consider the feedback system between the indirect drivers and direct drivers. And yeah, it is also very difficult, and it is very challenging to evaluate the relational values from the output of the simulation models. Yeah, sorry for taking me a long time. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
All right, thank you very much. We know that you have to leave very soon. Do you have like time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, Haga?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So we see one raised hand.
There's a hand by Malika. Would you like to ask the question by yourself, Malika?
Sure, thank you. I didn't realize I raised my hand, but thanks for the opportunity. I was typing in the Q&A. As I've been watching these presentations, it occurs to me that nature as culture seems to be a very local sort of pathway where the people residing in a specific landscape can decide how to treat their nature, whereas nature for society and nature for nature seems more like a top-down approach where regional authorities, for example, or national authorities get to decide what the policy says and what people can and cannot do with their nature. So how would you say policymakers, but also local communities and other decision makers can go about dealing with this sort of dichotomy, if I can call it that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it is very difficult and important question, I think. As Dr. Saito Osamu said, the advantage of NFF is that captures the 3 value perspectives of nature. But it can be a difficult point. It can be a disadvantage to clearly describe each scenarios or modeling case study. For example, as you said, nature for society tends to be focusing on the top-down indicators, and nature as culture tends to be a very local specific value perspective. So yeah, there is a very difficult, very big gap of the stakeholders. So how to communicate the stakeholders who want to maximize the nature for society and who want to maximize the nature of culture? It is a very interesting and challenging research topic, I think. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. And I wonder maybe sometimes nature for nature is what comes in. And, if a species is very charismatic, maybe the national authorities decide, let's do it for nature, and culture wins in the process. And other times society wins because people say, well, we need renewable energy more than we need these forests. But, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think common indicators and nature for nature indicators can be borrowed from the LB SAP or NB SAP for the region. But yeah, more case study is needed for, operationalize the NFF. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we had one more question in the chat in the Q&A. I think now it's gone, but I think it was on the lines whether the NFF already was part of the scenario development of the IPBES. Can you say a word about that?
So for the scenario developers,
I'm not sure who exactly asked it, and I can't see it anymore now in the chat. I think it was,
Thomas?
yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Saito has answered that. Maybe, yeah, you can see it in the answer section.
Sakshi, what?
We were talking
Now,
about
now I
the
see it
question.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You already answered in the Q&A, which is about
Yes.
the scenario aligned with the nature future framework in mind. And I think you already answered that question.
Yeah, right. I think so.
Yeah, if you include the scenarios you want to compare in the case study, you can identify how the scenario is nature positive or not using different indicators on the integrated indicator system.
Dr. Haga?
Hi.
Yeah, I had a, sorry about that again. Yeah, I had a question about, so you were mentioning about how it's difficult for different stakeholders to engage them with the NFF. So, I mean, till now, progress with respect to how it has been progressing with different case studies. Isn't it that, I mean, you cannot have a single, single standardized approach for all stakeholders? Isn't that correct? I mean, there's so many different stakeholders. So which stakeholders with which you have had case studies done with, conducted with, did you find that, it was much more, whether it be challenging, easier, or whatever, what was your experience in terms of how they were taking or uptaking that, the NFF, engaging with the NFF?
So basically, in my opinion, how to engage the different and contrasting stakeholders on the same table is very difficult, but the NFF is very good platform to communicate the nature positive futures or positive futures for each stakeholder. So yeah, I think nature positive NFF can be a good tool for communicate or communicate and discuss with how each stakeholder thinks about the local nature or local landscape. So yeah, it is a good research topic for social scientists or modelers to work with social scientists.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the challenge is that, how to really, set the good indicators to measure nature's culture, especially, quantifying relation values is quite it's not easy, like a sense of place, things. It's more, yeah, it's more psychological ones or relative identity. So we can use kind of proxy indicators, but we cannot really directly measure like a sense of place, etc. So that is a quite challenging part. And also so what we use is just, the proxy indicators, which we can interpret as a proxy, and then we can use the quantifiable indicators, but it's not really the 100% representing what we really mean by nature as culture, the nature for nature, etc. So there is still gaps between the indicators we use and actual, the values, the people. So during the workshop, local people mentioned many things about the nature cultures, like a number of the festivals, their motivation of the, continuing local festivals, etc. So these different indicators were the hint of the different indicators mentioned by the local stakeholders, but we cannot quantify all indicators and put in the all indicator into the models. So those are still the challenging part.
Yeah, and this indicator system can be modified during the workshop. And yeah, it is very big challenge to capture the relational values, especially for human activity, human connection, or such kind of proxy indicators that cannot be evaluated directly from the land use and land cover.
I think it's great that we are basically ending here with a little block on challenges and the need for collaboration and exchange, also right with different kind of scientists, etc. We've also seen in the chat already that quite some people are like interested in exchanging their emails, etc. to cooperate. That's really good, and I think that's also what's needed right now here to counter these challenges. For that, we would like to now move to a little advertisement block. But firstly, big thank you for the nice Q&A and presentation. And then I'm quickly share this screen. Because as already introduced, Sakshi and I would love to advertise the NFF Community of Practice to you all. What is the NFF Community of Practice? Some of you might even already have signed up, and be aware for that it's maybe boring, but maybe also not. And in general, what we want to do, or what this community of practice is currently a list of 130 signed up people, with quite a few people who identify themselves as early careers. So that's quite nice that we have a large group there also interested in that. And the idea is really to have a community that facilitates the further development of the NFF. And really being a collaborative space, right, where we can network, we can share approaches, also foster new collaboration. So it's really supposed to be an open space here and open to everybody. So no membership prerequisites that you must have published 5 papers on the NFF before you're able to join. Also, it is currently still coordinated by the task force on scenarios and models by IPBES, but what we really want is it to be a community-led group, so that it's coming from all of us, the coordination organization of activities. The activities that we have now planned, actually, we had a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago with some other early careers who have already signed up. And we really found out that something of interest would be a webinar series, just a couple times per year, that someone is able to present some current work, just like we had today, actually, more or less, right? Also seeing some challenges, but also some things that are really excited and ongoing, and also sort of a newsletter happening. So it's really about networking, collaborating, etc. So it'd be great to have more engaged people in this.
And yeah, it's a small community. It was formed like last year, November. So we are still growing. And if any of you would like to join our NFF Corp, we are happy to have you. And you can, as you can see, here's the QR code. So this will take you to the Google form. We can also share the link in the chat box in case you want the link to the Google form. And you can also access the NFF website on which you can find everything related to the NFF case studies and other, um, material as well. And we are soon going to also integrate it with NFF Corp. So members of this Corp can also find information on ongoing activities and other related resources on it. And if you have any further questions regarding the Corp, or would you like to, communicate anything related to NFF, your work, you can always email us on this ID. And if you have any question about it, you can ask us, and we will be happy to have you with us. And as like you already said, it's still growing. It's at the baby stage, but yeah, we are trying to keep it as open and flexible as possible. And definitely, it's community led. So yeah, we would love to have you take leadership roles in the COP. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to check the link shortly. I hope you can see the link, most of you. If you find it interesting, please do consider joining and see how you can participate. For now, we can open the floor to the audience if they have any more questions. I see there's one question in the chat box, Sakshi.
It's for Diego, I think. Would you like to ask this question yourself, Diego? Yeah, you can go ahead and ask the question, Diego, if you want. Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks so much. Yes, actually, that was the question. Has been discussed the let's say like the difference or the approaches between what the nature future frameworks and the UN approach of accounting approach has been discussed, or I would like to know a little bit about it, if possible. Thank you.
Can one of the speakers, would you be able to answer that question?
You mean accounting approach, like inclusive walls or other different type of the natural capital accountings, etc.?
Exactly. Yes, Dr. Saito. Yes.
I think we haven't done such kind of study yet, so it will be interesting how we can utilize existing those the UN accountings or inclusive wealth accounting can be utilized for the NFF context or NFF case study. I think there are some, maybe. I haven't reviewed from that angle, so I don't have any clear examples from top of my head, but I think there are a couple of studies which also use some inclusive walls, other indicators, at least not in the context of the NFF, but my previous PANSES project used inclusive wealth index to understand the scenario analysis we conducted. But during that time, we didn't use NFF, but yeah, I'm aware that they're using such kind of, natural capital accounting indicators.
Thank you so much. Thanks much for the presentation.
Yeah, before we wrap up, I just wanted to check again if there were any questions specifically for Thomas and Sakshi regarding the community of practice. Maybe I'll wait for a minute. Right, Sakshi, the process is pretty straightforward, right? So there's a website and you're already have many people on board and hopefully have many more people after this.
Yeah, you just have to like
And
fill the Google form and that's it. Like you'll have your
that's it.
email in the database and email you. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, so we'll follow up on that. Thank you so much to all our speakers, Dr. Saito, Dr. Haga, even Sakshi, Thomas, the time and experience that you have shared with us. It's really very valuable. It's a lot for us, ECRs. So thank you so much for your time. Before and I just wanted to say that this is the start to all the audience, all of us who are listening. This is just the start of the journey. So we've just told you a bit. They've all shared a bit about NFF. You've got a bit understanding about the community of practice. So it's up to you where you take it from there, whether the conversation ends here or it continues. Before we close, we just want to quickly tell you about the upcoming webinars. Like I said, this is, and Ray also mentioned to you earlier, this is just the first in the series a couple of webinars that we have planned for you at YES. And we'd love it even if the current speaker, if you find it interesting, we'd love to see you again, maybe to attend or even talk to us again. So let me just share that for a minute. I think there's Rahul in the audience. Okay, is Rahul in the audience?
Yeah, I think he's still here. I think you guys just go ahead and.
Oh, I go. Okay. All right, no problem. Can you see the slide?
Not really. Sorry. All right.
Yes. Now.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we have the next upcoming webinar on 3rd April. So the registrations for it are already open. You can see the next topic is going to be on ecosystem service mapping, more on data methods and tools on various spatial temporal scales. We have experts, Dr. Benjamin Burkhardt and Professor Dr. Solon Lathley will be joining us, and moderators from YES, Rao David and Rahul Yadav. Rahul, maybe you could at least tell a hi in the chat. So, so this is something that maybe you could look at. We hope that some of you might attend and find this interesting too. So we thought we'll just share this with you, and with that, we hope that you had a great time today. And once again, thank you all. And we hope that in some way or the other, our conversations continues. And yeah. And if there are any other questions, we can wait for a few more minutes. But I think our speakers said they might have to run a bit, leave for a bit. So we will wait for another 5 minutes in case there are any general questions from the audience that you want us to take. Yeah. Or else, other than that, please feel free to leave whenever you want. But yeah, we'll hang around for a minute or two just to see if there's any other thing going on. Thomas, I think there's a question for you in the chat box and not the Q&A.
All right. So because we have to commit with a time frame, and we have promised that we will end this for the host. They have other meetings and schedule. So we would like to wrap it up first. And if you still have a question, Sakshi and Thomas is already here answering this question for you. And we would like to thank the panelists again, Dr. Haga, Dr. Saito, Thomas, Sakshi, and Nita for handling the webinars. And we will share this webinar with you and also the PPTs after the webinars. All right. And thank you so much for the attention. Sorry for the technical problem with the Zoom platform. Actually, we are not really very tech savvy. And we want to try to keep it more
not at all.
family-friendly settings. Actually, if you want to say anything, we would like to have a discussion, but of course the time is not allowed for us to have this. All right. So thank you very much for everyone. If you have any question about the Nature Future Framework, you can also contact Sakshi and Thomas. And if you want to have the direct contact with Dr. Saito and Haga, I think they're welcome to. And check out the next event on our social media. check out the YES and ESP conference. Maybe it's gonna be a nice, interesting network for you. We wish you have a nice day and see you soon.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Take care,
Thank you
everyone.
so much, Nita and Kian. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.